Can one girl in a small town, an architect in a major city, and a suburban high school coach shape the future of the United States? Yes, they can. Because every 10 years, the census gives us that power. You can shape your future by responding to the 2020 census. Where do we need new roads to make our lives easier? Where will new school programs help our children thrive? Where could a new health clinic benefit neighborhoods? The 2020 census will inform these decisions and shape how billions of dollars will be distributed to communities like yours each year. And in 2020, you can respond to the census online, by phone, or by mail. It's easy, safe, and important. Make sure you and everyone you know is counted. Now is the time for you to get involved. Your community needs you. Together, we can educate and excite, inspire and make sure every voice is heard. Together, we can shape our future.
We are vigilant. We are ATL strong.
Nothing can hold us back. We've proven it time and time again that we are ATL strong.
We are in this together. Let's stay ATL strong.
We are the heartbeat of the city. We are ATL strong.
We can overcome anything because we are relentless in our pursuit of lifting up our communities. We are Atlanta strong.
As a native of this city, there is no doubt that we are ATL strong.
Atlanta is not just strong, we're ATL strong.
We can get through anything because we're Atlanta strong.
We stand together. It's why we're ATL strong.
Practicing faith and not fear, hope and not despair, because we're ATL strong.
Nothing can divide us. We are ATL strong.
We are ATL strong.
We can do this. We are resilient. We are ATL strong.
In difficult times, we'll continue to keep our communities ATL strong.
We can overcome anything. Our city's history proves it. We are ATL strong.
One city together, we are ATL strong.
I am in the fight with you because we are forever ATL strong.
Investing money in homeless shelters, hoping to help stop the spread of the virus. They're allocating up to $1.5 million for nonprofits that provide shelter and support for the homeless. The city says this is in response to the pandemic because homeless people may congregate, have limited access to preventative measures, and could have underlying health issues.
Well, the city of Atlanta is working to make COVID-19 testing as accessible as possible. And today, District 10 Councilwoman Andrea Boone partnered with the Family Health Centers of Georgia and MARTA to sponsor free coronavirus testing. Walk-up and drive-through testing was available at the H.E. Holmes MARTA station in Northwest Atlanta.
This is so important that we stop the spread of this virus in our community. And testing, social distancing, that is what is going to make the difference right here in our very own community.
I think it's wonderful, not only for me, for everyone that comes and takes advantage of it.
Organizers say they administered hundreds of tests today, and they plan to hold more free testing events in the coming weeks.
Today marks the lowest number.
Welcome to Stay at Home Connect. I'm Phyllis Jackson.
Start by cleaning your hands with soap and water or an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Make sure the face cover or mask covers your face from the bridge of your nose down to your chin.
Uber kicks off a new policy requiring its drivers, delivery people, and riders to wear masks. Uber drivers have to verify they're wearing a face covering by taking a selfie, which is then sent to the rider via app messaging. The company is telling drivers they have the authority to cancel trips without penalty if they don't feel safe, including if their riders are not wearing a face covering. It's common knowledge among the medical community that respiratory viruses can be transmitted through droplets from coughing or sneezing. What's less widely known is that normal speaking can also transmit viruses, which leads to serious implications when it comes to COVID-19. Scientists used laser technology to show saliva droplets that cannot be seen with the naked eye. A study involving the National Institutes of Health and the University of Pennsylvania reveals that the airborne lifetime of these small speech droplets can be anywhere from 8 to 14 minutes. The CDC recommends wearing face coverings when social distancing becomes a challenge. The study was published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Atlanta City Council member Antonio Brown sponsors a free COVID-19 testing event with the Family Health Centers of Georgia.
I'm super excited. I'll get my results in 48 hours, and I'm encouraging everybody in our communities to come out and get tested.
That's going to do it for this edition of Stay at Home Connect. Have a great night.
We are vigilant. We are ATL strong.
Nothing can hold us back. We've proven it time and time again that we're ATL strong.
We are in this together. Let's stay ATL strong.
We are the heartbeat of the city. We are ATL strong.
We can overcome anything because we are relentless in our pursuit of lifting up our communities. We are Atlanta strong.
As a native of this city, there is no doubt that we are ATL strong.
Atlanta is not just strong, we're ATL strong.
We can get through anything because we're Atlanta strong.
We stand together. It's why we're ATL strong.
Practicing faith and not fear, hope and not despair, because we're ATL strong.
Nothing can divide us. We are ATL strong.
We are ATL strong.
We can do this. We are resilient. We are ATL strong.
In difficult times, we'll continue to keep our communities ATL strong.
We can overcome anything. Our city's history proves it. We are ATL strong.
One city together, we are ATL strong.
I am in the fight with you because we are forever ATL strong.
Investing money in homeless shelters, hoping to help stop the spread of the virus. They're allocating up to $1.5 million for nonprofits that provide shelter and support for the homeless. The city says this is in response to the pandemic because homeless people may congregate, have limited access to preventative measures, and could have underlying health issues.
Well, the city of Atlanta is working to make COVID-19 testing as accessible as possible. And today, District 10 Councilwoman Andrea Boone partnered with the Family Health Centers of Georgia and MARTA to sponsor free coronavirus testing. Walk-up and drive-through testing was available at the H.E. Holmes MARTA station in Northwest Atlanta.
This is so important that we stop the spread of this virus in our community, and testing, social distancing, that is what is going to make the difference right here in our very own community.
I think it's wonderful, not only for me, for everyone that comes and takes advantage of it.
Organizers say they administered hundreds of tests today, and they plan to hold more free testing events in the coming weeks.
Today marks the lowest number.
We're going to be delivering with the Corrections Department and folks from the city packages for our seniors. Our seniors are telling me that they're bored, they want something to do. And so as a result of that, I've had a developer, Mr. Mike Abibi, who's a major developer in my community, who's actually donating packages to my seniors. We have coloring books, all kind of games, puzzles, and also we're actually giving out bandanas for my seniors to actually make sure that when they go out, they're doing what they need to do to protect themselves. I'm so blessed to have this developer, and along with Columbia, a High Point here in my community, because it's a great development.
This is Councilor Jennifer Ide, the Chair of the Finance Executive Committee of the Atlanta City Council. Today we'll be starting Day 2 of the City Council review of the Mayor's proposed fiscal year 21 municipal budget. I'm joined this morning by Vice Chair Howard Shook of the Finance Executive Committee. We'll do a roll call in a minute to introduce the other members of the City Council on board, and councils may be cycling in and out as their schedules permit and their technology is working. So I'm going to pause and do an initial roll call, and then we'll check back in with people during the course of the meeting. Can Ms. Kempson Wright or Mr. Pace or Mr. Somebody from the clerk's office do a roll call for me, please? All right. I am just going to go through. Is Council President Felicia Moore? I'm here. Okay. Councilmember Carla Smith. Here. District 2, Amir Faroki. District 3, Antonio Brown.
Here.
District 4, Quita Winslow. District 5, Madeline Archibald.
Here.
District 6 and 7 are on board. District 8.
Here. JP Matsakite.
District 9.
Here, Dustin Hills.
District 10.
Present.
District 11.
Present. Overstreet.
District 12.
Present.
Post 1 at large. Post 2 at large.
Matt Westmoreland's here.
Post 3 at large.
Andre Dickens is here.
Okay. So we have most of council, and I think others will be joining us as we move along and people get dialed in. So for today's schedule, we're going to start with the Department of Police, followed by Fire at 11 a.m., Corrections at 12 o'clock, and lastly, Atlanta Information Management at 1. If one group finishes early, we are not going to start early. We're going to stick to those starting times. This is being broadcast on Channel 26 and on the Atlanta City Council website, as well as social media. For my colleagues on City Council, I'm going to ask you to refer to the email that you received last night that has the briefings for today, as well as there were some corrections for several of these departments to the budget book. So you should have received last night an email from Ms. Kempson Wright. You all may want to open that up, and it has both the PowerPoints that we're going to see as well as the corrections, the budget book adjustments. So we're going to be starting with the Atlanta Police Department now. Good morning, Chief Erica Shields, and because we're not together, I can't see who you have with you, so I'm going to let you introduce your team and kick things off.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ide. I appreciate the intro, and good day to all of you. So my name is Erica Shields, and I'm the Chief of Police for the Atlanta Police Department. I am joined today by Darlene Jackson, who is my Program Management Director, Jeffrey Glazer, who is Deputy Chief of Support Services Division, and Assistant Chief Todd Coy. So we appreciate you affording us this opportunity, and I will dive right into it. If you go to the first page of our presentation, it says Summary of Current Operations. But what I would ask is, if you all can attempt to locate page 344, it should be an amended budget, which so hopefully that we're all looking off the same piece of paper. Initially, what was initially placed in our fiscal year 21 budget book has been revised somewhat. So on the left side, it should be white, and the right side should be blue. I'm hopeful that you have that document.
And let me just jump in, Chief Shields. That is the email that council members received last night. So if everybody can find their email from Ms. Kempson Wright, it is one of the attachments to that email, and it's called Budget Book Adjustments -police.pdf.
Oh, great. Thank you. Do you want me to wait a moment or keep rolling, Councilwoman?
I think you can keep rolling. Hopefully,
okay.
Folks can.
I will do that.
Find that as you talk to it. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, by the revised budget, APD is looking for a bottom line for its general fund of $214,915,960. This reflects a net increase of $9.4 million over fiscal year 20. The bulk of this is going to be a pension contribution. There was an actuarial study that is requiring an additional $15.5 million more be paid into the pension. So when you are going through the line items, there are a few things that stand out. The salary sworn is almost on par with where we were last year. However, the administration has committed to continuing to fund the Mercer pay study, and we will be seeking this year to have all of our officers, all of our investigators and senior patrol officers at 100% of what the pay study recommended, and our sergeants and lieutenants at 90%. This differential will be achieved through us not funding select vacancies within our department. The vacancies are on about par with what the added dollar amount will be required necessary to hit the pay study requirements. If you look at overtime, our overtime has been reduced by about $2.5 million from where we were last year. So we'll be looking to come in a little under $8 million, right around $8 million for fiscal year 2021. My goal, I'd like to do better than that. To put it in context, we are through April in fiscal year 20. We are at approximately having spent $7 million. We're down 32% from where we were last year. I want us to stay on track and try to use the least amount of overtime as possible. I've spoken to the COO about us doubling down on some of the event organizers. I think the city has been very gracious in providing a number of services for free for large events, but I think in this economy, we're going to have to really revisit how we provide services. To give you an idea, there's potentially two large events on our radar for the remaining calendar year. One would be Atlanta Gay Pride, which will cost the city, if we stay within the same structure as we have in the past, about $185,000. And if we do the Peachtree Road Race in November, that will be cost the city approximately $750,000 to pull it off. So I think that what we have to do is really, as we're going through these difficult economic times, there has to be more of some bargaining done in advance of these events being scheduled, so these event organizers realize the totality of the cost and bear a greater responsibility. But I realize that's for a conversation down the road, but it does all play into how we intend to keep the overtime costs down. If you go to our purchased and contracted services, it shows a variance of $6 million. This is because we were able to remove a lump sum Motorola payment, and that decreased our costs extensively. And then I think the last thing that you'll see on the capital outlays, that looks quite a high dollar amount, but we're well, and really what it is, it's a little over $5 million. What it is really we've rolled up much of our technology around body-worn cameras, in-car cameras, interview rooms, tasers into Axon. Axon, formerly known as Taser, is the holder of all of these products, and so this is the contract for them to help us govern in this space. I'm hopeful that I've hit on some key points here, and before we go to the next page, is there any questions in this area, or Councilwoman Ide, would you prefer I just go through our presentation and double tap? I'm not sure what your preference is.
I think let's just hold the questions till the end, and people will send me a message, and I'll get a lineup to bring all the questions to you at the end.
Perfect, fantastic. Well, in that case, we'll go to the summary of current operations. And on that page, you'll see on the slide, it says operational areas on the left, key metrics on the right. Many of you are familiar with our operational format. the Field Operations Division, 911 officers, backbone of the department, handle a huge volume of calls. I'm really proud of them. They do a great job. Where do we seek to improve as we move forward is, I think, those officers see everything real time, and there has to be a better connection between if they're seeing a block party, car racing, clubs congregating. They have to communicate this up better. That's the area of improvement we're going to work on there. And also in our 911 area, they do house investigators that handle a huge amount of the auto-related crimes and the burglaries. And we have identified significant room for improvement in our zone investigative efforts, and we've instituted metrics and measuring, and I expect to see improvement. But I cannot say enough about the 911 officers and the sheer volume of work and split-second decision-making they engage in on a daily basis and do it well. CID is our Criminal Investigations Division, so they're responsible for a significant amount of the follow-up investigation. And what I would say is historically, so when we look at it, we've always done well there, and we've always been able to hang our hat on the successes of a few areas, in particular one being homicide. Our homicide clear-up rate has always been significantly higher than many departments in the country and more than the national average. And why is that important? When you look at cities who are struggling with violent crime, their clear-up rate is low because if someone will commit a murder, they'll do anything. And if you don't get them off the street, you're going to have more issues. But how can we work so that we don't reach this point where we're reliant on homicide? We've really committed ourselves in the last 18 months to performing better and stronger in the area of getting a handle on shooting and robberies and getting arrests out of them, investigating them more thoroughly, doing a better job of making arrests. And the team has done fantastic. We've also put more of an emphasis on our gang unit. The gang unit has always been fantastic in collecting information on gangs, but where's the actionable? Are we making arrests? And I think one of the things that we have to do is take these two units, the robbery, the gangs, the shootings, those respective investigators, and just as I said, the 911 officers have to communicate what they see up, these investigative units need to communicate down, because the beat officers often are aware of and know who the gang members are in the zone. So if these two divisions aren't interplaying and coordinating well, it will impact our overall success. We're improving there, got a little room to go, but on a whole, our CID has done a fantastic job. CSD is the Community Services Division, and I realize in the PowerPoint things aren't quite aligned. So the Community Services Division houses, on the one hand, SWAT, airport motors, some of those strategic tactical units that you see out and about. I think as we go into fiscal year 21, my greatest focus and what really is going to be so important for our department from this division is how the COPS unit does. As with most of us, it's really hard to watch as kids aren't able to go to school, but especially when you look at at-risk children who we know are often reliant upon schools for food, basic health care, and just some level of attention. If you start layering onto that we put them in the space of online learning, and if they lack the structure of home and maybe they lack the technology, this is further complicating the space they're in. So as we go into the summer months, and there's not summer camps, it doesn't seem as though it's going to be, our concern is the prolonged isolation of many of these children. So our COPS unit has been coordinating with parks. They've been doing meals. They've been doing what they can with children, but I think we're really going to have to step up our efforts. And it's going to be difficult because on one hand, I don't know if we're going to get the green light to open our police athletic league up. We have our Promise Center, but these children really, really need support. That is really going to be critical for us as we move through the summer. The Contingency Operation Division, this division is unique, and it has absolutely become essential for our department. And in short, the division is responsible for the identification of, the planning for, execution of anything that potentially presents a threat to the city. And this is broad. Initially, when we designed it, in mind what we had was, okay, how do we manage large-scale events in this time of domestic terrorism, whether it's a parade or a sporting event? And then we got into the space of how can we better train, become the best trained, so when we're dealing with protest and confrontation. And so then now in this past weekend, they put forth this incredible tactical plan that helped us lock down street racers. So they've been phenomenal. But I can't say enough about them for what they've done the last 10 weeks, because I handed them a pandemic 10 weeks ago and said, here, sort this out. And they've done a phenomenal job. Ordering supplies, educating our employees, developing a flow chart on how to manage employees who think they might be exposed, coordinating testing so we're getting results in 30 minutes, coordinating how returning to work. And we've been very fortunate. We've had 14 people test positive in the last 10 weeks. 12 of them have returned to work. And I think a large part of why we were able to keep the numbers down is their proactive effort in getting cars and precincts disinfected, but also how they handled the people who were not well at the front end. Cannot say enough about them. SSD is the Support Services Division, and so they have a plethora of responsibilities, from the budget, the academy, crime scene tech, hiring. I think I'll stick on the hiring piece. Calendar year this year, we're doing very well. So we're through, I guess the numbers are through the beginning of May. We had hired 71 people versus 47 this time last year. We aim to clear well over 200 people this year, and we're going to stay on track. Obviously, government is one of those areas that it tends to do better when the economy is not well. It's always favored our hiring during these times. But honestly, our hiring has taken off since the pay increases were afforded to us about a year and a half ago. And lastly is our Strategy Special Projects Division, which handles all things technology. There's, of course, the Video Integration Center, body-worn camera, but also key stuff like CAD and RMS, which is the backbone of how well our 911 center operates. They've done a fantastic job, and I'm really appreciative of Gary Brantley's leadership in AIM. He's really helped us navigate some really difficult areas of technology, and also I'm appreciative of the fact he's taken an interest in keeping expenditures down, which I'm a fan of. So if we could go to the next slide, please. These are just some photographs to highlight some of the stuff that our officers have done in the past year. I'm happy that we've had a department that's, if we go to the next slide, please. And we've had our officers interacting in multiple cultural events. One is participating in Gay Pride, and then the photo to the right of that is our bicycle response team. We sent our officers out to Seattle. No one probably deals with protests in the country more than Seattle and Portland. And the bicycle response team is a terrific way to handle protests, but in a non-threatening manner. The Police Athletic League, I really hope we can get those doors opened again. It's so important for the Motors Unit, which I can't say enough about them. They're there for every need that we have. And then, of course, our recruit class, which hopefully one day we'll be able to actually graduate them. And just, our police academy is fully operational training. We've had no incidents of COVID there, thankfully. And it may happen, and again, we'll manage our way through it. But we're on track as our training goes. If I go to the next slide, it's the proposed budget changes. The personnel changes, we've touched on how the Mercer study will require an increase in pay. We've touched on the increased pension contribution. The next bullet point should really say a reduction in positions. because the salaries are able to be funded because we're not funding unfunded positions, and overtime committed to keeping down. The operational, it's been interesting. We've not made anyone exclusively responsible for coronavirus, but again, the division has had to manage that, and it's been unique. But they've done a very good job, and I think that when the rest of you all are able to come back to work, we'll be in a good place to help you navigate many of the questions that you may have. Professional service changes, we realigned a number of our contracts, and we're able to reduce that from about $200,000. Yes, we have taken a hit on some of the expenses associated with coronavirus. The sanitizer, the masks, all of that is costly. We've got contract renewals, whether it's civic maintenance, uniforms, the police uniforms, code demolition, software. But again, it's the technology piece. I think that Gary Brantley is just now getting the space to really help us reduce some costs and realize there will be some contracts to be written tighter. And I hope as we move forward, we can save further cost savings. Capital outlays, the big one for us is the $5 million I touched on earlier, and that's the Axon contract that handles all things technology when you think of how are we documenting our conduct as law enforcement so that we can be as transparent as possible to the public. Operationally, furthering our commitment in that area is the increased compliance with the body-worn camera audits. We take them seriously. We have people dedicated to it. We issue discipline. There is absolutely no reason not to have your camera on at this point. Charge it and on. No excuses. System security. So we're, like the rest of the city, trying to make sure we're in Windows 7. But most importantly is our MVPs. Those are our in-car patrol vehicle computers. They have to be upgraded. And everything that the officer is doing now runs through them. So we really have to, in this space, get on a higher lean platform. And when you're talking about expansion of evidence collection, for us, the evidence that we're speaking to is everything off of the body-worn cameras, the in-car cameras, and that comes back to the cloud storage. So that's a critical area for us, and we've been very fortunate. We've had evidence.com is very solid and withstood the cyber attack very well. So the last page is the key metrics for fiscal year 21. The only thing I'll say is that, because we're so crime-driven, we tend to operate calendar years, so please bear with me. We ended 2019 calendar year down 2% for overall crime, and our homicides were at 99. For this week, this time where we are right now, we have 33. You know what? Nothing is more important for us as we go into 2020 than reducing crime. And I'm not a big fan of putting percentages on because the reality of it is we have an obligation to hit hard and hit hard at crime. And I think the percentages can be very misleading. We've been there before. What good is 5% down if your violent crime is through the roof? So for us, I want to look at every crack, fissure in this department and figure out how can we improve. So our primary objective is how are we dealing with every type of crime and getting it down. Obviously, there is nothing more important than human life. And so I just say that the focus on homicide and homicide reduction is priority A. If you go to violent crime, which is the next column over, we ended 2019. So even though we were down 2%, to my point, in crime for the city, our violent crime was at 6%. It was at 6%. That's a problem. And what we saw was really an increase in the shootings. And when you look at crime for the city of Atlanta, 87% of our crime is property crime. And that much of it ties to your stealing cars, stealing from cars, and shoplifting. 13% of our crime in the city is violent crime. So how do we rein in that 13% that's so devastating and so impactful? Gun seizures, number one. Our Apex unit has done a phenomenal job on being in their singular focus on getting guns off the street, and the difference it's made is I can't say enough about them. Where else do we have to do? We have to put more gang charges on individuals. I think twofold. One, the department has missed this opportunity somewhat in the past. I have had judges say to me, that homicide case, that robbery case, your investigators did a great job, and the but has been they could have tied a gang nexus to it and further gotten more time for the defendant, further bolstered their case. So for us, that's imperative we do that. One, because it's the right thing to do and it shows quality investigative work, but two, we also recognize that we're dealing with a chronic repeat offender problem. So this is another lever we can pull to try to override that. And so as we go into the calendar year 2020, fiscal year 21, I fully expect us to explore gang charges where appropriate. Property crime, year end, we ended down 4%. It didn't feel like it. But amazingly we did. Where we really saw a rise was shoplifting. So what are we doing? It's kind of a strange space now because with the coronavirus, you don't have the vehicles out. So the vehicles aren't in the parking garages. They're not in the parking lot. And so that has helped us. Obviously, as there's fewer cars about, it presents fewer opportunities for theft. So I'm not quite sure what the space will bring us as we move forward. But our obligation is the cases that we are receiving. This is where we go back to the zones and the investigative unit. They simply have to improve their performance on following through on the cases they have and making arrests. So that's just a brief overview of our department as we go into fiscal year 21. And I just want to say thank you, Council, for all of the support and patience with APD. I know that's a lot of moving parts, but I please know that myself and my staff are here for any of you as we move forward for any of your concerns or needs. Thank you, Councilwoman Ide.
Thank you so much, Chief Shields, for everything that APD does for the city and for a really tight and focused budget presentation. You covered a lot of information in a short period of time. So we have 30 minutes left. I am going to keep a really hard stop on these budget hearings since we're doing it virtually. I have two council members signed up to speak. First, we're going to have Dustin Hillis and then Councilmember Overstreet. I'm going to ask you guys to keep it to just 6 or 7 minutes in case somebody else signs up, and Councilmember Shepard. So let's go in that order. Councilmember Hillis, Overstreet, then Shepard, and try to keep it to a few, 5, 6, 7 minutes. In Councilmember Antonio Brown, so we can finish by 11. All right, Councilmember Hillis, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chief Shields and your team for the presentation. Wanted to start off with, I know we have 6 weeks left in this fiscal year, and I've seen a lot of numbers about vacancies in field and the academy, but where are you now? And if you could possibly project 6 weeks ahead with hiring, what net will we have added as far as sworn positions?
So where we are right now, our staffing is showing that we have 1811 sworn, but I've got to back out of it 137 people who are recruits that are in their various phases of recruit training. As I stated, our hiring, so we'll be probably, our last number, did I say 77? We last year, bear with me, Councilman, I have it right here. typing into space. So last year, our net gain was 139. And I would say where we're at now this year, probably with 6 weeks to go, I would expect us to be, I'd like to see us at 90 hired. I would expect our net gain to beat last year's of 139. So it's hard to project, but I would absolutely want us to beat that.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. So with, I know the correction budget adjustment book that we have, it just, of course, reflects the general fund sworn, and that's saying 1609. So I don't have the airport numbers in front of me, but about how many sworn positions are at the airport?
We have right now at the airport, I know there's 147 people working there. What's it for vacancies, Darlene? Do you see that? So we got 147 vacancies. I'd have to double check. I think they have them under contract as well. So right now it's they probably say they have about 15 vacancies.
Okay. Just wanted to get, what I'm worried about, and I certainly understand, needing to continue filling and making and fulfilling our promises of the pay study, but not funding vacancies. I know we funded 100 last year, and I know we're in some tough times, but three things really. We're in a APD is a rebuilding stage, which much to your points of the net gains is in a positive light. We're in a pandemic, which public safety is direly needed between you all and AFRD. And as you mentioned in your presentation, during times like this, when the economy is down, people really seek out government jobs. So, I have some heartache about not funding any vacancies, given how well we're doing. So I would hope that the leadership team and the administration could really drill down and, maybe we don't fund 100, but, can we fund, 40 or 50 or something like that so we can keep up this great progress that we've made over the past few years? If you have any feedback on that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that there's absolutely, it's an opportunity on multiple fronts. And I have to say that I know these conversations are hard, but I've not felt anything but support as for our efforts as we move forward. And I think often when we went through this previously, I guess it was 2008 or 9, natural attrition, people just leaving for a variety of reasons, took care of a number of the issues. But I have not garnered anything but support from the department and a green light to keep moving ahead.
Understood. And just two more quick questions. One is, I know what was some money allocated this fiscal year, sought out to have APD manage or contract to manage the big cameras, and I know there were some issues with that. So, in this budget, has that went fully back to the Atlanta Police Foundation to manage and maintain those devices?
So right before the pandemic hit, I had met the COO, myself had met a couple of times with Dave Wilkinson from the APF, and the plan at that time was to do legislation moving $500,000 to the APF and let them take over the camera management maintenance business, which I think everyone in our police department would welcome. It has just been exhaustive, and it's also very difficult when we have all of the procurement limitations on us, and I have no problem with them. I understand why they're there, but it creates a problem when you need to get stuff fixed quickly, and that tends to be the world of cameras. So as far as I know, that's still the plan, that we will be providing some funding to the foundation and having them take over particularly the maintenance and replacement piece of the camera world.
Gotcha. Thank you. And then the final question is kind of going back to the staffing. The 2,000, around 2,000 number has always kind of been a magical number. To my understanding, you didn't really have any research behind it. So has APD at any time completed a very thorough, probably would be 100, 200-page study about how it's structured, what kind of staffing does the Atlanta Police Department need? Has that ever been done? And if so, when was the last one? And my understanding is either way it will be time for one. Would you be supportive of such a study?
So, thanks for that. There was a study done, and it may have been, it might have been 2012, and the Police Foundation paid for it. The difficulty that I see with police study and recommendation staffing is every city is so different. And what you find is you really have to have a study that takes into account the amount of events, vehicular traffic, pedestrian traffic, and so there's all these variables. And if you tend to find that when formulas are recommended, they don't necessarily fit for a particular jurisdiction. At that time, the recommendation was a significantly higher number than 2,000. So, I would absolutely be supportive of it if it was focused on Atlanta, kind of like our beat realignment study really looked at the particulars, the nuances of the city of Atlanta. Because if you don't nail down the variables, you just get something that you just look at and you just shake your head.
Right, yeah, and I would certainly want such a study to be highly specific to Atlanta, not just we have X number of population, so this is how much we need. To your point, look at our events, our massive amount of traffic, calls for service, things like that. So I'll be looking more into that.
Okay.
Because if we do take a step back and don't fund any positions, again, I hope that we can fund, like I said, maybe not 100, maybe half of that, maybe a little less. But we can take a step back and say, let's study this and see, a good number of what we need here at APD. So I'll end my questions there and yield to my colleagues. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Councilman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hillis. We have 20 minutes left, and I have 5 folks signed up to speak. So let everybody try to limit it to 3 or 4 minutes, and then if you have additional questions, connect with Chief Shields afterwards. So, Councilmember Overstreet, you're up next.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just ask these top 2 questions then. Chief Shields, I just want to first thank you for all of the work that you always do. I appreciate Atlanta Police Department so much. I think that the work that you do is phenomenal, and I won't waste any more time on that, but I just really appreciate what you all do. So I'll just cut to this main question that I have. So I think that the city has a 6-mile gap in coverage from John A. White Park all the way up to Camp Creek Marketplace. We need more visibility in the city. And I was first thrilled that we were working on that, but I keep getting messages that something may be off, derailed because of different circumstances. But I want to, and I've talked to several people that feel that, that we should absolutely address our coverage in these 6 miles. So what are your thoughts about that? And is it in the budget at all? Have you asked for this to be addressed in our budget? And what are your plans?
Thank you, Councilwoman Overstreet, and thank you for your kind comments. So I don't think anyone will disagree with you that the fact of Southwest Atlanta and the Zone 4, the coverage is too large. It is simply too large. So there's been a lot of discussion about how do we best resolve this. And prior to COVID, there was a lot of energy around standing up something at the Greenbrier location. And there was a lot of discussion about moving some of our units out there. And it really, I loved it because what it was doing is it was putting a large number of our personnel in an area of town where we need them, and you have all the employees coming and going. I just don't know. It just feels like the COVID piece has just taken things and just tilted them on their side. And so I'm reluctant to say, I don't know. I don't know what our financial, any change that we make, any move, there's a large financial expense associated with it, whether it's getting a building up to code, the technology, the furniture, the parking lot, nothing is inexpensive. So the question is, when we start looking at these projects, are there the available funds to make it happen? The desire is there, and I know that the desire has been there from the administration and the support. I just don't know what funding is, and I just don't know.
Okay. So the conversations, and I see now that we do need to have conversations offline, but the conversations that I've had with people, the decision makers at both of the areas that we really do need to occupy, we need to continue on the journey that we were on. They both are making everything neutral. They're revenue neutral. So in order to move the units, it won't cost the city. And so I'm going to have to speak with you offline about that. But that 6 mile gap is very serious. We stretch all the way to Camp Creek Marketplace, and we cannot forget that. And people are concerned about that, not just my constituents, but, even people within the city and people within the force. So I just want to make sure that we keep all of that top of mind, because like I know, when people do not feel safe, nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. So I just want to continue to work with you on that, and I'm going to work directly with you. I'll give you a call. I really miss being on public safety for these kind of reasons.
Fair enough.
I agree
Fair enough.
Yeah. Okay. And so I agree with you that we must not bear the full cost of the large gatherings. So I want to state that. So especially with the larger organized gatherings, I just think that there is room there for us to change the budget in that way. Do you have any idea how much the less organized and the smaller vendors are paying for our services? Just offhand, right off. If you don't, perhaps you can supply that to council so that we can start there, figuring out, why are we bearing this full burden of paying for all of these large gatherings?
That's a fair question. I think a lot of it has just evolved over time. I think some of it is these gatherings weren't always so large. And then as they grew, the city just kept absorbing the expenses. It grew larger and larger. I think it just became a part of the expectation and what was routine business.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to leave it all right there. So thank you very much, and I'll be speaking with you soon, okay?
Thank you, Councilwoman. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Overstreet. And I appreciate leaving the follow-up to offline so we can get to others. Councilmember Shepherd, you're up next. And we have about 13 minutes to get through 4 folks.
Thank you. And Chief Shield, I also want to say thank you for you and what your team is doing out with the city. Your leadership is really helping us tremendously in terms of public safety. I do have questions upon the violent crime, and I just want to go back and make sure that I heard you correctly in terms of the increase of shootings. Is that tied to gangs, or is that just shooting as a whole? You talked about shootings and gangs, and I see you seized a lot of guns up under the gang cases. And the other question I want to ask you, so we can try to do them all at one time, is you talked about an increase in gang charges. Are there laws already on the books, or are you trying to look at other laws to increase gang charges, or are you looking at charges that already exist? So if you can answer those questions.
Yep. Thank you, Councilwoman Shepherd. Yes, I think that absolutely the increase in shootings was tied to gangs. We saw a lot of, I'm sure you remember, shooting of houses, shooting people in the legs. I mean, it was almost every day. It felt like we had someone who was shot in their leg and they just didn't know how it happened. So, yes, I would say it was tied to gang behavior. The state actually has a gang statute, so it's there. And the key is it's a balancing act, because on the one hand, you cannot take the approach of the federal government and take 3 years to put together a case and then say, here, we've got a great gang charge on you or a RICO charge. We have to keep the city safe real time. But I do think with some additional investigative work and just, if everybody goes in the mindset of we're not seeking an arrest, we're seeking a gang charge on top of the arrest, I think that we can still pull that off quickly and efficiently. But the charge is already there on the book with the state.
So it's just a matter of us actually doing a lot stronger job of making sure that we tie the two together, all this together. Is that what you're saying?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. If I have any other questions, I'll ask you offline. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Shepherd.
Thank you, Councilor Shepherd. Next up, Mr. Brown, then we'll have Mr. Massakite, and then Ms. Archibald.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Chief Shields, thank you for the presentation, and I also miss seeing you on public safety, but thank you for the great work that you're doing. My question is specifically to the foot patrol that we initially set up in my district along the MLK Lowry corridor. We saw some great results from that foot patrol. But I know it was kind of a struggle because of the required overtime that it took to be able to put it in place and to get the officers committed to doing it. And I think the overtime was like an incentive to get them to commit to that foot patrol and bike patrol that we were able to establish on the west side. Is that something we can continue within this budget, Chief? Or is there a way we could potentially look at how we can continue that work? Because we saw a dramatic decrease in crime in that area. I believe it was around 57% that crime had decreased by when we began that operation. So I was just curious of your thoughts around that.
No, that's a good question. Thank you, Councilman Brown. Have you seen our folks out there on foot or bikes lately? Let me start there.
Off and on. I haven't seen them on some days. I've seen them on some days. I asked an officer before, was this, a reoccurring thing? And they just said when they've been asked to do it, they go out and do it. So, I'm hoping we can continue it.
We can.
Okay.
So here's the,
okay.
Some things have gone sideways a little bit with the COVID thing. It's just been managing, but we're finally in a space where we're kind of resuming normal operations somewhat. So what I would say is probably what I'll be looking to do then is assigning people there so we can avoid accruing overtime, but also provide essential coverage. So I appreciate the feedback.
That would be amazing. And that was all my questions, Madam Chair. Thank you so much, Chief Shields. And, I know Major Collier is the new assigned major. He's done a phenomenal job. And I thank you all for everything you're doing.
Thank you, Councilman Brown.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman Brown. All right, next up we have Councilmember Massacite, and then Councilmember Archibong will close it out for us. And we got 7 minutes left.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chairwoman Ide, and appreciate your presentation, Chief. Just wanted to follow up on two questions that Councilmember Hillis asked. It looks from the budget supplement that the number of sworn officers was going to increase 75 in the general fund from 20 to 21. So maybe you can follow up on that and just be sure that that is indeed the case in the budget. And then number two is following up on the maintenance of the cameras. I want to be sure that we have the appropriate amount of dollars for the cameras that are coming off of the police foundation and becoming the property of the city, that we are have adequate dollars to maintain those. So not really questions, but just wanting to make sure that those things are included in the budget.
No, thank you, Councilman Matskai, and I'm making a note of them, and we'll follow up on both things. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, and Councilmember Archibong.
The interest of all the great things that have been said, I agree with, but in the interest of time, I will just two, kind of concerns or questions. When it comes to the recapture program, are there any considerations that would cause there to be a difference in how that program is executed? Will we need less people? Will that be a budget?
I believe was your question when we need people. Is that what you asked?
With the retired officers, the recapture program?
Yeah.
Are you going to need less?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we're not scaling back on our staffing, so we're not at a point where we're having to furlough or lay off swarms. So no, I don't think that would be impacted right now.
Okay. All right. And then the last question involves the predictive analytics that your department uses so well. Is there a variable that captures what's happening now with the increase in unemployment and how that tracks with crime?
Wow, that's a really good question. You know what? Really, we rely on more than anything our crime analysis unit to monitor the trends and where they're changing. And that's an excellent question because that is something that we're going to have to start looking at. And I do imagine that we're going to see some changes, some areas maybe we hadn't seen before.
Wow. Well, keep us posted, and thank you so much to the men and women who serve us so well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilwoman Archibong.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Archibong. In the last 3-4 minutes that we have, I have Councilmember Overstreet had a follow-up question that I think many of us are interested in. We do have the holiday weekend coming up. We know that people are itching to be out and about and visit friends and be in the nice weather. And so can you just sort of give us an update on how you're doing with folks who are wanting to be out in parks and public spaces in groups and how that'll be handled this weekend?
Thank you. So from day one, our approach has been one of educating people, talking to people, and encouraging them to practice social distancing. And I said this at my public safety presentation, and I'll say it here. It's been very difficult because messaging has been so random and arbitrary, not just locally or in the state, but nationally. And so you really it's very hard to get a consensus how to behave, because people haven't bought into whether this pandemic is real, if it's here now. So our approach is one of education and encouraging. The governor's order regarding is when the state reopened was about 26 pages long. It's a great operational manual if you're running a business, but it by and large is not enforceable. So you know, we have tried to discourage individuals from congregating, but honestly, encouraging people to practice social distancing and good hygiene and all of the other things around it is not a law enforcement function. It's just not, and we're not going to get in the space of arresting people for sitting in a group on a patio. We've made notations for restaurants that were clearly in violation, and we've documented that. So when their permits have to be renewed, that will be presented to the License Review Board as a part of the process. So we are documenting these incidents, but we really are relying on individuals to take individual responsibility for their behaviors.
All right. So if individuals see large groups or establishments that look like they are clearly operating in contravention of what our current rules are, call 911, call 311. What's the best way? And for us council members also, when we get complaints, how should we direct?
Absolutely. I would say call 911 so we can go real time. I will tell you, most of the time when we've gone out, especially in the restaurants, they're not violations because they're still complying with people not congregating inside. When they're on the patio, it's a whole different ballgame. But call 911 for council folks. If you call your zone and assistant zone commanders. If they're unresponsive, call myself, Assistant Chief Coy. I mean, we're going to follow up. And absolutely, if there's room for a charge, if there's room for documentation, we're going to do it. But I think that this is really more an issue that it just hasn't. It's an individual behavior issue, and it's difficult because people don't see eye to eye, as you all know, on it at all. And you know, so now police are being put into the middle of a moral discussion. But we will absolutely call it. We'll go out, and if there's something to be done, we'll do it.
All right. Thank you so much, Chief Shields, and for the rest of your leadership team and all of the men and women of the Atlanta Police Department. And we will send you a list of any follow-up questions, but really appreciate everything you do and your presentation this morning. And we're going to move on to Atlanta Fire and Rescue now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ide. And I have to say, you run probably the tightest ship I've ever ridden. Thank you.
I used to be a school teacher.
I can tell. Thank you.
All right. So we are going to move on to Atlanta Fire and Rescue. Before I welcome Chief Slaughter and his team, I'm just going to remind my colleagues that, again, if you'll go to the email that was sent last night by Ms. Kempson Wright, it was also resent this morning by Mr. Pace. You will have a copy of the Atlanta Fire and Rescue PowerPoint in there, and they also have a PDF in there called Budget Book Amendment -Fire that is the same setup that we just looked at with the police department, that has the page, their general front page from the budget book, and then a blue section to the side that has some adjustments that have been made since the budget book was printed. So I'm going to give everybody a second to pull those materials up, and it looks like the PowerPoint is up and running on Teams to be broadcast, and so I'm going to jump in and welcome our fantastic fire chief, Randall Slaughter. And again, can't see who you have with you today, Chief Slaughter, so I'm just going to ask you to introduce your team and jump into it and get going.
All right. Well, good morning, Councilmember Ide. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. Well, good morning. And also good morning, Council President Moore, other distinguished members of Council, as well as the listening public who may be on the call this morning. I am Fire Chief Randall Slaughter, and I, along with First Deputy Chief Byron Kennedy, will be presenting the Atlanta Fire Rescue Department's annual operating budget for fiscal year 2021. We're also joined by each of the deputy chiefs from the 6 divisions of labor: Rod Smith, Glenn Riley, Jimmy Giddens, Ingrid Dixon, Antonio Webb, and Michael Winfrey. We will absolutely honor your request for brevity, but I would be remiss if I did not start by thanking each of you individually and collectively for your support of me as fire chief, as well as the brave men and women of AFRD, as well as for your alignment with our Honorable Mayor Bottoms, as she has provided unprecedented leadership for our great city and made a bold and significant commitment to the well-being of our brave firefighters and EMTs and their families and to Atlanta public safety as a whole. Our budget presentation today will consist of 5 slides. In this presentation, we will present high-level fiscal summaries. However, we'll be prepared for more specific and detailed questions, if any, at the end of the presentation. This presentation will address the following broad but key areas. Number 1, proposed budget changes. By the way, council members, you can track and follow us in your PowerPoint presentation starting on page 3. Number 2, proposed operational changes. And lastly, key metrics and performance targets. I want to preemptively state that we will attempt to convey in the numbers and our subsequent comments the following. Is this budget cautiously optimistic? Yes, it is. It is prudent for us to maintain this posture given our current and anticipated fiscal climate. Will this budget adequately fund activities sufficiently to provide for the safe operation and safety of our members, particularly our firefighter EMTs, while also maintaining essential services? Yes, it will. Now, will this be a challenging belt-tightening year, one in which we will be required to do more with less? Without a doubt, we absolutely will, and it absolutely does. But we are one Atlanta, and as a department, we are committed to the overall fiscal stability of our city as a whole, and we are committed to do our part. As we planned this budget, we anticipated our new normal. We partnered with the mayor's administration to plan for and project a fiscal period that assured all essential services were preserved. In previous fiscal periods, we have either requested to increase our annual budget or we have trimmed our annual budget in order to meet the real-time service level demand. This next fiscal period will be no different. However, what will be different is that we will not have the fiscal agility to support some non-essential, mission-critical activities. And to a greater extent, we will restructure our activities and some of our purchases in response to operational changes necessitated by the COVID-19 pandemic. In my attempt as fire chief to constantly prepare AFRD through succession planning and for an eventual transition of leadership, I am now going to pivot and allow First Deputy Chief Byron Kennedy to present the remainder of our budget, after which we will be prepared to answer any questions you may have. Doc.
Thank you, Chief Slaughter. Our fiscal year 2021 total proposed general fund budget is nearly $96.2 million. Roughly 86% of this amount is allocated to personnel expenses, which fund the salaries and benefits of the 807 general fund employees. Approximately 90% of all of our employees are sworn firefighters who function predominantly in areas of fire suppression, hazard mitigation, and emergency medical services in either field operations or aviation operations. Atlanta Fire has 6 divisions of labor that are grouped into 3 operational areas. Fire administration covers administrative services, as well as support services. Aviation and field operations support the functions of fire suppression, hazard mitigation, and emergency medical services. And finally, technical services being the third operational area. It includes community risk reductions, communications, the training academy, and fire investigations. As we began to start looking forward, we actually developed a budget that supported our fundamental objectives and priorities. These remain to be recruitment and retention, competitive compensation, succession planning and personnel development, and finally, fleet and facilities maintenance and replacement. Next slide, please. Now, in reference to our highlights, and as we bring FY20 to an end, I must mention that we had some substantial and long-term programs like our fire apparatus replacement program, our facility improvement and replacement program, and finally, our continued efforts of succession planning with the executive leadership team. On a similar note, we've had some other major successes, such as the development and implementation of the competitive compensation program. This is, of course, in partnership with the mayor, her administration, city council, other city departments, as well as the Atlanta Fire Rescue Foundation, who, through their generosity, funded the research and spearheaded the endeavor for our members. Atlanta Fire also executed an aggressive and proactive response related to the current COVID-19 pandemic, keeping our personnel safe while preparing for the worst. Our department is also able to boast the fact that we have two separate accreditation statuses, one being awarded by the Commission on Fire Accreditation for the entire department, and the other awarded by the Committee on Accreditation of Educational Programs for the Emergency Medical Services Professions, or COAM, which is specifically for our paramedic instructional program. Additionally, Atlanta Fire demolished the 60-year-old burn building a little more than a week ago. This demolition makes way for the modular unit replacement slated for the start of the next fiscal year. Next slide, please. Now, let's take a look at our proposed budget changes as we transition into the fiscal details of the FY21 budget. The overall changes increased the annual operating budget from $91.2 million to $96.1 million, or a difference of $4.9 million, and assures that our all-hazard emergency response services are maintained. It supports some current operational and programmatic areas, which I will cover later on within this presentation. It also reduces or minimizes all non-essential activities. Our first tile covers personnel. As we consider salaries regular in FY20's adopted budget, they total $4.5 million compared to FY21's proposed salaries budget of $3.6 million, which represents a decrease of roughly $900,000. Considering salaries sworn in FY20's adopted budget, they total $42.9 million compared to FY21's proposed budget of $45.4 million, which represents an increase of represents an increase of $2.5 million. Our sworn overtime in this year's proposed budget lowers the overtime allocation by $1.2 million and is funded at roughly $3.5 million. Pension and other personnel costs are right-sized based on actuarial efforts previously discussed by the Chief Financial Officer. Although this budget defunds 47 sworn vacancies and defunds 8 non-sworn vacancies, it does support funding all sworn salary increases as offered by the competitive compensation plan schedule. The 8 non-sworn vacant positions will primarily impact our technical services community risk reduction section. Currently, a new operations model is being developed to conform to the limited accessibility of buildings, limitations on crowd sizes due to social distancing guidelines, and educational institution closures due to the COVID pandemic. Overall, 5% of the departmental salaries were reduced and projected to be minimally impactful due to continued attrition. Within the second column, purchase services and contracts, or professional services, are decreasing from $3.4 million in FY20 to $2.4 million in FY21, which represents a decrease of nearly $980,000. Despite this decrease, we will still maintain our fire captains and lieutenants promotional exams. We'll maintain our sworn health and wellness programs. We'll also maintain fire station contracts for repairs and maintenance, as well as the medical director's annual contract. We'll also maintain necessary technological contracts that are required for fire operations and safety, as well as other minor contracts based on need. In the third column to the far right, you will note that we group the remaining expense areas as other expenses. This includes supplies, capital outlays, interfund charges, and other financing uses. Our supplies for FY21 are decreasing by $1.8 million to $3.3 million compared to the adopted budget for FY20, which was $5.2 million. Due to service level changes, Atlanta Fire expects supply expenses to be less than previous periods, as a few internal special events will be scheduled from July through next spring. Reductions in training academy consumables have dropped due to ongoing issues with the Ashwood training location. Our capital outlays will decrease by roughly $403,000. Next slide, please. On the next slide, on this slide, you'll see that we have highlighted some key departmental programs. Our budget, of course, is a line item budget, so the amounts on this page have already been discussed on the previous slide. However, the following programs are truly funded, and we wanted to highlight these operational changes while still indicating the funding that is available on the line items. First, the competitive compensation program continues Mayor Bottom's historic pay increases for sworn firefighters. On July 1st, our members will receive the next increment of pay increases. Second, the FY21 proposed budget includes the continued funding for 100 recruits who are currently in our 11 to 12-month fire training academy. The budget also funds required training and certifications for personnel to maintain proficiency and functional skills. We will also continue our efforts to institutionalize succession planning throughout the entire department. Finally, FY21's facility and fleet initiatives include funding for replacement of the burn building, as well as funding for lease purchase payments for providing our fire recruits the necessary live burn simulation training, in addition to having reliable apparatus necessary for emergency response. Before ending this portion of our proposed FY21 budget, I will mention that our full-time positions, or FTE, for FY21 is 807 general fund employees. This concludes the fiscal portion of our FY21 budget presentation. Thank you for this opportunity. I will yield the floor back to Fire Chief Slaughter.
Thanks, Chief. And Council, now we will entertain any follow-up questions that you may have.
All right. Thank you so much, Chief Slaughter. and Chief Kennedy. Let me see my lineup of who may have questions. Let's hear from Councilmember Hillis first, and colleagues, just let me know if you'd like to be put in the lineup. So, Councilmember Hillis, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairwoman Hyde, and thank you, Chief Slaughter and Chief Kennedy, for the presentation. Really going to jump right into the same thing I discussed with APD. Probably sound like a broken record if you listen to that presentation and my questions. Looking at your positions, pulled this from your last quarterly, it looks like we had at that time 957 field positions, 139 vacant positions, leading us up to about a almost 13% vacancy rate. As with APDs and all the other departments' budgets, we're not funding any vacancies this year. Have some heartache about that. Really like to fund at least a small number, whether that's 25 or 50, something like that, to continue our progress. Speaking of progress, can you speak a little bit about your projected net positions for fiscal year 2020, understanding we have about 6 more weeks to go?
I will. So over the last 12 months, we have had a net increase of 58 firefighter EMTs. We hired 104, but we separated 46, 21 to retirement, 18 to resignation. We dismissed 5, and we had 1, unfortunately, to pass away. And so I project over the next 12 months, we'll see about the same net increase in firefighters. We do have 101 going through the process right now, and I project that we will graduate those classes over the next fiscal period, but then I also project that we will lose the same amount through attrition.
Well, aren't, much like APD does, don't you count your recruits in your field positions?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so going back to the fiscal year we're in now, what will be the net for FY20?
The net, it's going to be the 58.
58. Thank you for that. There's been a lot of discussion in our quarterlies, I know at least a few times, about a lateral program in order for us, as we are increasing our compensation. Obviously, we want experienced firefighters to look at Atlanta. So can you speak a little bit about any lateral program we currently have, or what the plans are for that for this coming fiscal year?
Yeah, and I know you and I have had a lot of discussion about this lateral program. That's not my main focus right now. What my main focus right now is to graduate these 101 that we have actually going through the process, especially in light of our challenges with the training infrastructure. As you know, before COVID-19, actually the onset of it, we had to condemn and close our training academy. So my focus right now is to actually get those 101 graduated and into the field. I just can't really reassign resources to the degree it's going to be required to facilitate this lateral program right now.
Okay. On your raises, I know kind of phase 1 has been implemented, and we will be implementing phase 2 for this fiscal year 21. And I think we all know you took a different approach than the APD raises. Can you talk about what happened when this was first announced, and what additional is going to be funded? What are the raises going to look like on July 1st?
Yeah, so we're on track, and thankfully the mayor is going to honor that commitment, even in light of the grim financial forecast going into the fiscal period. But you're right, we did take a different approach from APD, because to implement it in the same fashion that they did was only going to exacerbate the problem we were having within the ranks in terms of compression. So what we did was we decided to apply a flat rate amount to each rank, so that each rank within the organization, with the exception of fire chief and first deputy chief, of course, is going to get an increase. They got an increase in what we considered year 0, which was on January 1st, and then they're going to get the next increase on July 1st is what we're calling in the plan year one. So everything is on track in terms of the plan as it relates to competitive salary increase.
And what are those percentages for each one of those?
I don't have that document right in front of me. I can absolutely provide it to you after the call is over.
Send that to me. Yeah, please send that to me. I believe a couple more questions and I'll be done. I know that over the past, really probably 1 to 2 fiscal years, the lack of staffing has led to the mandatory overtime, having some of our firefighters work at least, I believe, once a month, 48-hour shift, and also has affected the staffing on the apparatuses, engines, and trucks. Is that going to be addressed in this budget that's presented? And what is the plan to at least get that staffing back up on those apparatus in our busiest stations, which I would imagine most of those would be downtown, and also the airport? What's the plan for that?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Sometime around the latter part of last year, we modified our staffing. We just didn't have enough actual firefighters to continue with the minimum of 4, so we started staffing the apparatus with 3. Is that optical? No. But we have a large enough department to where we can send extra apparatus and have enough firefighters on each incident to safely operate. And as I talk to other Metro fire chiefs, I have to say this, as Atlanta's fire chief, it's not so much what's in the budget that I'm excited about, but it's what's not in the budget that I'm excited about. And what's not in the budget is we're not going to furlough or lay off any of our firefighter EMTs or civilian staff. We're not going to have to black out or brown out any of our fire stations. And we're not going to have to decommission any of our major units within our organization, like what some other major city fire chiefs are facing. That's really got me excited about this budget.
Thank you, sir. And the last one, what is the specific plan for, I know we've made a lot of progress under your leadership with apparatus replacement. What is the plan for this coming fiscal year to continue that?
Yeah, we're going to continue on with the apparatus replacement schedule that we currently have in place. We made tremendous progress in that area. Deputy Chief Smith, I think you're on the call. Do you want to speak more about that?
Hello, absolutely. I'm here. Deputy Chief Smith, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, good morning again. Yes, we've made significant strides with our apparatus replacement program. That program currently has us moving forward where we have effectively replaced 77% of our engines, and we are working towards replacing the TDAs this upcoming year as well as the battalion vehicles. In addition to that, we have replaced 71% of our straight aerials and platform aerials. So we are in good shape, and we are proceeding, as the fire chief said, with our apparatus replacement plan.
Great. If you could just send me the details on that, that would be appreciated, what we're going to additionally cover this coming fiscal year. Chief Slaughter, I do have some additional concerns, but they're kind of some specific to things in my district. So in the respect of time, I'll just give you a call later on to discuss that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Please do.
Thank you, Councilmember Hillis, and our analysts are also collecting questions that we'll forward that we aren't able to get to today or more information is needed to answer them. I'm going to go on next to Councilmember Andrea Boone.
Yes, good morning, Chief Slaughter and your entire team. Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief Slaughter, I do have a couple of questions that I would like to talk with you in detail offline, but first I would like to thank you and your team for running a best-in-class department, protecting your members in this pandemic, being those frontline workers, showing up at those homes, installing those smoke detectors up and down these streets to protect our seniors, and just your overall willingness to go beyond the call of duty. To your entire team, thank you, and we are grateful, and I will email those questions to you shortly. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Council Member. I appreciate your continued support.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Councilmember Boone. I know you've been working hard to make sure that everything's been running smoothly the last 2 months.
Yes,
We're going to go on to our Chair of Public Safety, Councilmember Shepherd.
Chief Law. Thank you so much, first of all, for all you all do for the city of Atlanta. You all truly are heroes, and I just want to say thank you. You talked about the Ashwood, our fire academy. Now, I'm just going to ask, you said it has been condemned. Is that permanent at this point? Have we made a decision that the fire academy will not be opening up on Ashwood again?
First of all, good morning, Councilmember Shepherd, and thank you for joining us on the on our safety stand down call last week. It really meant a lot to the members as well as Councilmember Matsakite. But so, Councilmember Shepherd, we are working with the Department of Emergency Asset Management, and we have not come to a definitive conclusion yet on whether or not we will ever be able to reoccupy that building. But as of right now, it's condemned and off limits to our training staff.
So apparently, when they went in and did an assessment, they determined that it was too much at this point, or are they even trying to remediate it at all, or they decided not to remediate?
I am not quite sure. I have to follow up again with Remy over at DEAM and just see exactly where they are. My goal is at this point, as fire chief, is to find us another location, because it is absolutely critical that we have a location to train our firefighters.
So at this point, when you talked about the 101 folks that you have in training now, until you come to a conclusion, we won't be having any more training. Is that what I'm hearing you say also?
Well, fortunately, we had already, we were really proactive in developing relationships. So one of the classes is actually doing their training at Area Tech. And they're actually
Is that a part of the 101?
Yes, they are.
So my question is, once these 101 folks have graduated from their class, we will not have any other classes until we come to a conclusion on what we're going to do with the fire academy. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we're not at that point yet, but at some point, I'm going to have to make a recommendation on where we go with further classes. But as of right now, I'm talking with other fire chiefs and seeing if we can utilize their resources in order to get the fire portion of our training completed.
Okay. So the other question from a financial perspective, I know, and you may not be able to answer this, it may have to be answered by our CFO or someone with the mayor's office, is that I believe that facility is owned by Atlanta Public School Systems, and we were actually paying them X amount of money per, I don't know if it's on a yearly basis, how we pay it, but if we're not utilizing it now, would that not be money that would be coming back to the city? Or what are we doing with that? Can you answer that?
I cannot answer that, and I'm wondering if either Roosevelt or Ms. Wilson is on the line.
So how long have we been out that facility now? How many months now? 2 or 3 months? And I'm wondering what we're paying for that on a monthly basis.
We've been out approximately 3.5 months.
Right.
Yeah. So Councilman.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is CFO Council. So there has been internal discussions by the mayor's office, in trying to secure a future site, but in terms of those facilities that are no longer not functioning, I'm not sure just yet, and I don't want to say something that I'm not aware of, about the ultimate what's going to actually happen to those particular facilities. But there's been discussions, at least over the last year, about trying to improve the training facility, not just for fire, but for APD as well.
Well, I know, and I hear what you said. We've been talking about this for quite some time. And until this COVID-19 virus, I think a lot of us on public safety were saying there could be a priority for this year. But in light of what's happening now, I'm not sure if that's going to happen. However, in the meantime, the Fire Academy now, based on what Chief Slaughter is saying, after we have graduated this class of 101 folks, we may not have a place to train or actually recruit more firefighters. And I don't know if that's a part of their assessment of their budget. I guess I have to go back and ask them to look at that again and tell me if that's a part of his projection for next year, that we will not have any more trainees. And I'm like Mr. Hillis now, what impact is that going to have on us as a city if we don't have more continued folks coming in training and our attrition rate? So I'm a little concerned about this.
Yeah, so...
okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Roosevelt.
No. I was just going to say, that I think we've heard your concerns, and we would actually definitely provide you, with some feedback as to just where we are.
All right. We'll have public safety next week. Maybe we can answer that in the public safety meeting next week. Thank you. I'll come back in terms of the budget also.
Councilmember Shepherd, I want to be real clear. We are going to train these firefighters.
Right.
We'll find some classroom space. And in terms of the live fire training that's required, the good thing about this budget is we do have money in the budget to fund a temporary burn building. So we will train these firefighters, rest assured. It's just going to require us to be creative in how we do so.
I think, Chief Slaughter, you're saying you're going to train the ones that you already have here, the 101, and I hear you loud and clear on that. But in terms of going forward, because of what's happening with the building, we'll be able to train any more. And what impact is that going to have on your attrition if you're not going to be able to train any more until we can figure out what's going to happen with the buildings? And I'm a little concerned about that.
Understood. And we have a lot of follow-up conversation as it relates to it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Shepherd. Councilmember Hillis has asked to circle back. Is there anybody else who hasn't spoken yet who wants to ask a question? All right. If not, I'm going to let Councilmember Hillis come back to his follow-up.
Thank you, Chairwoman Hyde. Chief, just a few additional questions. On your budget line items, there's an almost $2 million reduction in supplies. Can you go into that?
Yeah, the bulk of that reduction is related to, we were going to try to go into phase one of a replacement plan for our self-contained breathing apparatus. However, because we're not actually completely at the end of the life cycle, we're going to delay that purchase. And so that takes up the bulk of that $2.1 million.
Okay. And then additionally on that same sheet on the line items, I've spoke about some of the overtime, but in this budget there's, well, it looks like it's actually been corrected. Instead of a $1.2 million reduction, it looks like there's going to be about a $500,000 increase in overtime costs. So that answers that question. But again, I do have some additional questions, but we'll speak offline on those. Thank you, sir.
Right. And so, Councilmember, you'll remember on last year when we graduated those recruit classes, that put us in a position to actually decrease our overtime expenditures because, of course, when you infuse 30 to 35 recruits into the field, it reduces your need to hire extra so much.
Right. All right. I appreciate that and look forward to speaking with you offline.
Yes, sir.
All right. If nobody has anything else, I think we're going to say thank you so much for a very informative presentation, Chief Slaughter and Chief Kennedy, and thank you to all the men and women of Atlanta Fire and Rescue Department. We so appreciate everything that you have done in your service during the pandemic, and I know that you all have been out there putting yourself at risk to keep the rest of the city safe. So know that we're thinking about you and appreciate everything that you do. We will collect any outstanding questions and get them your way, Chief Slaughter, and hopefully you can follow up with folks at the Public Safety Committee meeting next week. So thank you today. We ended a little bit early. We're not going to start corrections early because for our technology reasons, we need to stick to our start time. So we're going to take a little bit of a break right now. Mr. Bassenberg is going to put everybody on mute. If you want to remain on the call-in, if you want to call back in at 12, that's fine also, and we will kick off at 12 with the Department of Corrections, Interim Chief Rodney Bryant, and again, on the email that you received from Ms. Kempson-Wright and Mr. Pace, there is both a copy of the PowerPoint presentation and a budget book supplement on there. So thank you to Atlanta Fire and Rescue. We will be back at noon with Department of Corrections.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for your time today and your continued support.
Investing money in homeless shelters, hoping to help stop the spread of the virus. They're allocating up to $1.5 million for nonprofits that provide shelter and support for the homeless. The city says this is in response to the pandemic because homeless people may congregate, have limited access to preventative measures, and could have underlying health issues.
Well, the city of Atlanta is working to make COVID-19 testing as accessible as possible. And today, District 10 Councilwoman Andrea Boone partnered with the Family Health Centers of Georgia and MARTA to sponsor free coronavirus testing. Walk-up and drive-through testing was available at the H.E. Holmes MARTA station in Northwest Atlanta.
This is so important that we stop the spread of this virus in our community, and testing, social distancing, that is what is going to make the difference right here in our very own community.
I think it's wonderful, not only for me, for everyone that comes and takes advantage of it.
Organizers say they administered hundreds of tests today, and they plan to hold more free testing events in the coming weeks.
Today marks the lowest number.
We're going to be delivering with the Corrections Department and folks from the city packages for our seniors. Our seniors are telling me that they're bored, they want something to do. And so as a result of that, I've had a developer, Mr. Mike Abibi, who's a major developer in my community, who's actually donating packages to my seniors. We have coloring books, all kind of games, puzzles, and also we actually giving out bandanas for my seniors to actually make sure that when they go out, they're doing what they need to do to protect themselves. I'm so blessed to have this developer, and along with Columbia, a High Point here in my community, because it's a great development.
Well, we're here today to try to be our brother's keeper. We're helping to provide a full pantry of groceries to families around Atlanta. We've got cabbage, we've got chicken, we've got canned goods, we have milk, we have fresh vegetables, we've got fruit, we've got frozen items to distribute to the families around here to make sure that they can help get through this pandemic in a more whole sense and fashion. You know, the city of Atlanta is still basically closed. The virus is still rampant in Atlanta and Fulton County. We're ground zero for not only existing cases, but for new cases. So we want to try to help alleviate the grief that some of the families have felt economically by helping to provide these groceries so that they can have, you know, a full meal in their home while they're sheltering in place.
We are vigilant. We are ATL strong.
Nothing can hold us back. We've proven it time and time again that we are ATL strong.
We are in this together. Let's stay ATL strong.
We are the heartbeat of the city. We are ATL strong.
We can overcome anything.
because we are relentless in our pursuit of lifting up our communities. We are Atlanta strong.
As a native of this city, there is no doubt that we are ATL strong.
Atlanta is not just strong, we're ATL strong.
We can get through anything because we're Atlanta strong.
We stand together. It's why we're ATL strong.
Practicing faith and not fear, hope and not despair, because we're ATL strong.
Nothing can divide us. We are ATL strong.
We are ATL strong.
We can do this. We are resilient. We are ATL strong.
In difficult times, we'll continue to keep our communities ATL strong.
Today is Wednesday, May 20th. We just took a little break from our budget department hearings, but we are going to get back going again. We're going to take a quick roll call because we did take a break between fire and rescue and corrections. I'm going to ask Ms. Kempson-Wright if you do a roll call of which council members are joining us for this session.
Councilmember Carla Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Amir Arfaroki. Councilmember Antonio Brown. Councilmember Cleta Winslow.
Hearing, so we're going to get back going again. We're going to do a quick roll call because...
Here. Councilmember Natalie Archibald. Councilmember Howard Schiff. Councilmember J.P. Mazakite. Councilmember Dustin Hillis.
Here.
Councilmember Andrea L. Boone.
Present.
Councilmember Marcy Collier Overstreet. Present. Councilmember Joyce Shepard. Councilmember Michael Julian Bunn. Councilmember Matt Westmoreland. Councilmember Andre Dickens. And Council President Felicia A. Moore.
Councilmember Mazakite here. Councilmember Brown here.
All right. Well, I'm sure that we will have other council members who are in the process of signing back in and joining us. So it's 12 o'clock now. We're going to do the Department of Corrections from 12 to 1, and then we will end the day with AIM from 1 to 2. We're going to do what we did this morning and stick to the time frame. So if we do end early with corrections, we're not going to start AIM until 1. I want to go ahead and remind my colleagues that you do have an email with the PowerPoint presentation in case you're having trouble viewing it online, and there is a budget book adjustment sheet that was emailed to you as well. So that is what Interim Chief Brian is going to be speaking from. So if you'll pull that up. And I think we've also been joined this afternoon by our city's Chief Operating Officer, Joshua Williams, and Matthew Bartlett from the Office of Innovation as well. If we have some questions about the reworking, reimagining of the city jail, they are welcome to jump in and field some of those questions too. So good afternoon, Interim Chief Bryant. Thank you for being with us. We have an hour to cover the Department of Corrections. We've been running about 30 minutes on presentations and then leaving about 30 minutes for questions. So I'll just let you get it kicked off and introduce whoever on your team you have with you this afternoon. You have the floor now.
Thank you so much, Council Member. With me, I have Deputy Chief Mitchell, Major Johnson, Dr. Elam, and our budget manager, Ms. Pastel. And so we would like to really just thank you all for giving us this opportunity to present the budget and the continued support that you have for the Department of Correction, as well as the Mayor's Office and administration. But most of all, I would like to thank the men and women of the Corrections Department who've been doing a phenomenal job as we maneuver through this unique time and in experiences as it relates to COVID-19. The men and women have come and worked continuously without any issues or extreme concerns, and have done a phenomenal job of minimizing any intrusions of COVID inside the correction facility itself. And so with that being said, we'll go ahead and start on page 1 of the slide, which is FY20 highlights. Are you with us?
Council members should have their own, and I believe that it's pulled up on our on the broadcast as well.
Oh, okay. I'm not seeing it on the broadcast, but I'll go ahead. Go ahead. Okay, there we go. So we're starting out with the community outreach, of which I think the Department of Correction does a phenomenal job in going beyond the walls of the facility itself. And FY20, we had the inmate details where we had a number of over 7,000 inmate hours utilized to help every council district in the city to minimize some of the issues that we've had out there, touching over 1,700 streets and collecting over 39,000 bags of garbage, which gave the city an overall estimated savings of $130,545. Additionally, our Youth and Adult Empowerment Summit, and what we one of the biggest things that we think has an impact on what we do for the city as a whole is the Jose R. Williams Help Feed the Hungry that's during the Christmas and Thanksgiving and MLK holiday times. Additionally, the annual holiday food and toy drive, and as well as feeding over 1,000 meals to our seniors. Our operational support is clearly our warming centers, where we provide over 7,000 meals to include linen and hygiene products, cots, and laundry services during that time. Currently, what we're facing and managing at the jail is our COVID-19 piece, and being that we recognize that we have low detainee rate here that allows us to redistribute some of the resources to help out the other departments. We have a significant partnership with the Atlanta Police Department, where we are going out and monitoring Compete Mount Park, as well as working and feeding and distributing meals throughout the city. And then most recently, we increased our staff to make sure that we were able to assist in the operational street racing, where we did the transport so that we can keep as many officers out on the street as possible. And then most outstandingly, I think, which really should receive many accolades, is the PAT 3 program. And to date, there's been over 21 inmates that have successfully completed the transition phase, with 10 currently in the program now. I will go ahead and move on to the second page, page 2, summary of current operations. As you can see in the slide, we have seen a reduction in our budget trend, as well as our actual staffing. Our personnel count is 226, with sworn of 155, sworn 155 and civilians of 71, with an attrition rate of 13%. And the additional expenditure will be in the overtime. Purchase and our technical services area, we have to manage our print services as well as our medical record systems and facility maintenance. The supplies that we have to continue to manage is the food services, medical security operations, utilities, and facility management. We'll move on to our page 3, our proposed budget changes. Here we were seeing a number of reductions as it relates to what we have to deal with going into budget year 21. Our budget changes, you'll see a $30,000 reduction. That $30,000 came from us saving money by moving OPA inside the facility. There was going to be an outstanding piece of the budget, but we were able to save that money because that lease was taken over by the state. Operational changes, we're taking a look at our department wireless needs. We will see some level of increases as it relates to the wireless need to manage the camera systems and buy more cameras. The evaluation of the facility maintenance and preventive maintenance agreements, we're taking a look at that to see exactly how we can have cost savings and reevaluating our maintenance agreements that cover our major mechanicals throughout and contracts throughout the jail. Other budget changes you will see is a $150,000 reduction, $150,000 reduction as it relates to food service, operation, and facility maintenance. This operational change is being maintained from actual FY20 and will continue into 21. We'll move on to page 4. Our proposed operational changes. You'll see in health service there's no actual budgetary change, but the operational change, one of the things that we recognize is that we'll be changing 2 of the positions from full-time to part-time, saving us some monies in that space. The elimination of extra help positions in our mental health will also allow for us to utilize funds in the health services. In the review of our pharmaceutical ordering and changes in medical protocol, I'll speak on how we are changing the health services, moving that into a division on another page. However, what this allows us to do is to give us greater opportunity to have cost savings and actually ordering more pharmaceuticals and keeping them as a supply as opposed to ordering them to individual that need them specifically. And then there's a reduction in contract medical staffing and usage of overtime. One of the things that we spend a great deal of money on is the bringing in people to nurses to actually supplement the staff that we have on hand. If we take a look at how we're managing that piece, we believe that we'll also have a reduction there. There's no significant budget changes as it relates to detention and security and our detention services. Operational changes, what we've recognized is that we can combine some of the assignments that people have currently, cross-training them to take on more responsibility and taking another look at their workload to see exactly how we can maximize the number of people that we're maximize the efforts that they have, the staff that we have on hand, what they're doing. And then a continued monitoring of our overtime. Overtime continues to be a significant Achilles heel for correction. We're taking a look at how we're actually staffing people, looking at changing off days to have maximum number of staffing as it relates to people being on work on certain days, as well as taking a look at how we can probably make some changes in shifts to minimize the overtime issues that we're seeing. And then facilities preventive maintenance. Our budget, you're seeing a budget reduction of $312,000 there. We're taking a look at some of our internal maintenance issues. We will probably have to rely on OEAM to assist us as we make those reductions in that piece. But we don't think that it would be a significant hit or impact on the jail at all. And then our operational changes is preventive maintenance and program the major facilities, plant, and equipment. The team we have on hand does a phenomenal job of maintaining and keeping an eye on those issues daily so that we don't get into extreme situation as it relates to those facilities issues. And then we'll move on to our metrics of FY20 of April 30th to 2020. So next slide, please. As you can see from the numbers of detainees booked, we average the number that we have is about 15,657, giving us an average daily population of 117. The average booking time is 51 minutes, but the average length of stay is 2 days. The average number of housing units used is 4, and the average daily population of non-Atlanta Municipal Court inmates is 1. That generally comes from the U.S. Marshals. Our inmate work detail number, the inmate work detail, which this is what you see to help clean up the communities in the streets and highways, that number is 7,403, giving us an estimated cost savings of $130,000. And the number of partnerships we have currently, and it continues to grow, is 528. But as we see the address during the time of COVID, those numbers, we are seeing a significant reduction. As you take a look at your slide, and with the last reporting date of April the 1st, you see a significant reduction as we're working with the courts and APD to minimize the number of people that we have in the jail and the time that is spent in the jail. Next slide, please, which is the key metrics for FY21. You will see no significant metrics. There was no significant measures for FY20, but as we go into FY21, under healthcare services, we're monitoring our chronic care of visits, our HIV testing, our physical performance, and the mental health consultation, inmates' grievances, and the number of religious services held. Detention services, the metrics for FY20 were the number of detainees as well as the number of housing units. Our benchmark for FY21, we're clearly taking a look at what we're doing around overtime usage and then reducing our average daily population from that 117 down to 0 to 50. And then the facility maintenance, there were no significant metrics in FY20. However, our 21 benchmarks will be the number of work orders completed internally, as well as the number of work orders required outside our outside vendors. And so you will see that as you can see, that there are a number of reductions as it relates to what we're doing in corrections. This is in line with the mayor's administration. We don't think that, it will allow us to really tighten our belts to make sure that we're able to continue to provide the services and assist as needed. But we do believe with the team that we have in place and the measures put in place that we'll be able to do it. It will be stringent, but we'll be able to achieve the mission from day to day. And with that being said, we'll open it up for any questions that you all may have. Hello?
Yes, this is Councilmember Ives.
Yes, ma'am.
Are we, let me see if I have anybody lined up for questions. Council members, if you will send me a message if you want to get in the queue for questions. I also want to acknowledge that since we did our roll call, we have been joined by Council President Felicia Moore and Councilmember Joyce Shepard. And I'm going to go ahead and call on Councilmember Shepard as first in line for questions.
Welcome. Welcome back, Chief Bryant. Good to have you back. I want to just first of all just basically say thank you and your team for all the work they've done with corrections in terms of being very creative over the years, actually getting out there on the streets with us and maintaining a great correction and detention center is great. Very proud of where we are. Can't wait to see what we're going to do. Hoping to hear very soon from the mayor and everyone else from that commission in terms of recommendations for closing and what we're going to do with the center. I mean, that may be something we're again looking at in terms of our budget for next year. This may be a good opportunity for us to begin to really have that conversation at this point. If we're going to keep it or if we're going to sell it in terms of revenue, that may be a thought. I know Fulton County is interested in buying it and expanding. They've talked to me about it as a area of public safety. So I just want to put that out there, but I'm not sure where the commission is at this point. But thank you all for what you do every day and for what you all do for the city. And welcome back. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Council Member, and we really appreciate it. And I will clearly pass on your acknowledgement to the team as a whole. So thank you for you all's continued support.
All right, let me just see who else is in the lineup who has a question. So, council members, feel free to send me a message if you want to, if you have any questions for the chief or if you have any questions for the COO. Okay, I'm going to call on, wait 1 minute. Councilmember Hillis. And, well, Councilmember Hillis, you go, and then I'll get the rest of my list together.
And again, welcome back, Chief Bryant. I guess I have the first few questions are for you, and then perhaps then the COO. I did see your numbers on the average number of prisoners and the sworn positions. What seems to be the current, I guess, jailer to prisoner ratio that we're maintaining at the facility?
The current ratio, I don't have that number. Give me a few minutes and we can calculate that for you. On average now, to date, we generally have about 25 people in the jail on average, but that number continues to fluctuate significantly. But give us a few minutes and we can calculate that other number for you.
25 is the number of jailers or number of prisoners?
Prisoners.
Okay. The next question, I did see the number of one on your presentation, but are we still, I guess, partnering or contracting with other jurisdictions to house prisoners at ACDC?
Currently, we still partner with the marshals, but there's no one. We don't have anyone in from them currently.
Okay. And then I guess the further questions, then I'll wait for you on the ratio once they're finished addressing this. But I guess the next question is following up on Councilmember Public Safety Chairwoman Shepherd's questions or I guess concerns. Is, can we get an update from the COO or someone on his team to give us an update as where we are on the report to repurpose this facility in the future?
Yes, good morning, Councilmember Hillis, and certainly good morning to all on the call. Thank you, as always, for your continued support and leadership. As it relates to update regarding the reimagining of ACDC, as you all know, the task force kicked off in May of last year. As it currently stands, there's been a number of things that have been accomplished to date. Of course, the work of the task force has incorporated a lot of community engagement, as well as key advocates and others within the community, as well as many on the administration and throughout the city. As we have continued to work through this process with a lot of our stakeholders, there's three primary work groups, if you will, that are currently underway that will essentially be providing recommendations as part of this effort. We expect those recommendations to be delivered to the mayor. I believe that the current time frame for that is June. With that expectation, there's a policy work group that will specifically look at city ordinances as well as state statutes and other research that the city should consider to either remain, to be converted into civil violations, as well as any that may need to be eliminated to help enhance public safety. The other work group will be a building design work group. This work group will specifically look at analyzing the building capacity for adaptive reuse of the center, the facility, so that way we can leverage that to accomplish the goals of the initiative, of course, which is to support our community, specifically as it relates to providing continued support services for those who are just disproportionately impacted, specifically in this area. And then the last group is a program work group, which essentially that work group explores support services and other activities that could be housed within the building that would best advance the expectations that's consistent with the Center of Equity that the mayor's initiative is seeking to accomplish. That expectation, of course, is looking at housing and homelessness support, justice reform, programming options, as well as workforce development, employment, financial empowerment, health, mental health, as well as behavioral health support. With that, we will, the expectation is certainly that the mayor will receive a recommendation from the task force sometime in June, at which she will then review that and then begin to develop a thought process around the next key actions as we move into what we would consider to be a phase 2 or our path forward, which would be specifically to identify the strategic decisions that we need to make and then begin to organize, based on community feedback, what final design options we would need to look at. There may be a need for us to look at particularly elements related to policy and legislative reforms, as I mentioned, making sure we get additional feedback and input from public safety, certainly from this council, as well as working continuously with our external partners to further expand and understand some of the operational needs and closure options that may be needed. And then, of course, we'll then bring that back forward and we'll continue to work under that phase 2 exercise as we continue to work to fully close the facility and turn it into a center of equity as expected by the initiative that's been initiated by the mayor.
All right, thank you for that update. Really appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
And Councilmember, in respect to your first question, that number is 12 to 1, but and that's also us manning graded detention as well.
Okay. Appreciate it, Chief Bryant. Thank you, and thanks to your team.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Hillis. Councilmember Westmoreland is next.
one more. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. On slide 2, you touched on the FTE count that has seen some pretty steady declines from FY19 to 20 to 21. Could you talk a little bit about where you've seen or where our employees have gone, whether it's to other departments within the city, whether it's to other corrections departments across the region, whether it's to neither of those things, as you've talked to officers who have left 165 odd over the last 2 years, what have they been telling you?
Clearly, and thank you for the question, Council Member. Clearly, as they recognize that the jail will be transitioning, they've gone to other agencies and departments.
Predominantly within the city, or have you seen a number of them going to corrections facilities in other municipalities or counties?
In all, to include some have even gone over to Atlanta Police Department, but yes, to other sheriff departments and facilities.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Westmoreland. And Councilmember Shepherd, did you have another question?
What we're going to do with it. I have been asking in the last several months to get a report of that to my Public Safety Committee as the Public Safety Chair, and have not been able to get a response from the mayor's side. I've asked for several meetings that have been canceled. I'm hearing your report. I would respectfully like to ask that a report is given to me as the chair, or someone meet with me as the chair, and that whatever the recommendations are, that they actually come before the Public Safety Committee also. Can you respond to that?
Good morning, Councilmember Shepherd. I will be more than happy to schedule time with you, and certainly if we need to have someone that's participating and leading the task force from the mayor's office to provide a report out to Public Safety Committee, we'll certainly be happy to make that accommodation.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Do I have any further questions from council members? Well, I think that is it. So thank you so much for your presentation, Chief Bryant. And I think there are a couple of items that we'll send you an email to follow up on, but we appreciate your time today and all the effort you put into this presentation. And thank you to Mr. Williams as well, and we'll be circling back with you. So we're going to wrap up the Corrections Department briefing right now. We're going to go back on mute, and we will reconvene at 1 o'clock for our last presentation of the day, which will be from AIM.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
budget hearing. This is Councilmember Jennifer I, the chair of the Finance Executive Committee. It is Wednesday, May 20th at 1 p.m. We've had a productive day so far, and we are now going to hear from the Department of Atlanta Information Management with our CIO, Gary Brantley. Just a reminder to my colleagues, you can watch this online, or you did receive an email with the PowerPoint presentation if you want to pull that up yourself. There was no budget adjustment sheet for AIM, like as we saw with the public safety this morning, and so the numbers that Mr. Brantley will be speaking from are the numbers that were in the budget book that was delivered to you. If you'll just send me a text to get in line for questions, I would appreciate that. And Mr. Brantley, the format we've been doing, we have an hour for your presentation. I've been asking the department heads to try to keep the presentation to about 30 minutes. We'll let you get through your presentation without interrupting you, and then we'll save about the last half of the window that we have for questions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the city's Chief Information Officer, Gary Brantley, and ask him to introduce the rest of the team who he has with him today.
Yes. First of all, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I am Gary Brantley, the Chief Information Officer, and thank you, Councilwoman I, for allowing us this opportunity to present our budget for FY21. Alongside me, virtually, we have two of the deputies, one of which is our Chief Technology Officer, which is Ty Hayes, and also our Deputy CIO for our business office and also our project management office, and her name is Erin Ball. Before we start, the first thing I want to do is really thank the mayor and her administration and office for being extremely supportive to Atlanta Information Management, and also the City Council for just giving us great support as you know, we move our items and legislation through there. And last but not least, I know many of the AIM department and the team members are watching, and I want to thank them for the hard work that they undertook, not only this year, but just with the major pivot around the COVID-19 pandemic. And so we'll start really quick with the first slide, which is a summary of our current operations. And so, as you can see, we are down about 1.6 million on that slide from a budget trend perspective, and our head count is down about 10 heads. And so this is, as you know, just general fund numbers. There are other IT team members who exist in other areas such as aviation, watershed, public works, and APD, et cetera. And so right now, this is really just a conversation around the general fund operation. When we look at our operational areas, what you will see is, we have infrastructure enhancements that we're focusing on. We have application enhancements that we've been focusing on, and also security enhancements, most importantly. And one of the things, we kind of broke this down into a couple of areas. Over the last year, we've been adamant about strengthening the core of the city of Atlanta from an infrastructure perspective. We wanted to stabilize our infrastructure and security and define IT operating models with clear accountability and engagement. Another focus with that was to really improve our IT skills internally. And so we've been focusing on talent development and also simplifying our application portfolio around different types of redundancies that we have across the city. And those are areas that we've been focusing on. Another area was increasing our alignment within the city of Atlanta. You may say, what does that mean? That really means improving trust and engagement with different departments and really focusing on quick wins to drive the value for departments. Also, in that process, we want to innovate and accelerate, and that means optimizing our cloud utilization and deployment. and also our application modernization, which is very key to, how we move forward from the city of Atlanta. And that was all focused on what we call a 555 initiative, which was what could we do in 5 days, 5 weeks, and 5 months. And that turned into a 12-month roadmap that actually ends in June 30th. And so out of that, there were about 42 initiatives that were, birthed out of that area. And so I would be remiss not to mention the COVID-19 before I move on, because so much of it depended on the IT organization and IT infrastructure. And so one of the things that I'm really proud of with the team is that we really were able to pivot quickly. And that means that the things that we were supposed to be focusing on that were basics within the city of Atlanta, especially after the cyber attack, we were able to focus on. And we saw the fruit of that with our ability to be able to change on a dime when this pandemic hit. We definitely weren't expecting it. And to be able to continue to keep city operations running and to make sure that the infrastructure was robust enough, was that absolutely a testament to the team. Also, one of the things that I would like to add from a key metrics perspective on this slide is, and I'll talk about this on the next slide, is we implemented network bandwidth and implemented network segmentation. Explain that to you a little bit. We implemented solutions that provided productivity and collaboration, and some of you all have dealt with that firsthand, which is multi-factor use implementation, and also rigorous scanning of our network. And so as we move to slide 3, some of the highlights that are there for AIM and also the city of Atlanta is our infrastructure enhancements. Many of you all know we made a lot of enhancements to our wireless network, specifically our guest wireless network. We increased our internet bandwidth 10 times to what it was before, which actually really provided us a lot of help as it relates to the teleworking posture that we had to move into. Also, our telework and remote capability, and also rebuilding the service desk, which is back up, which is called AIM Now, was also an enhancement in a very huge highlight for FY20. As we move to our application enhancement, many of you all know, if you've been in the city for a while, we had an intranet called CityNet. We were actually able to reintroduce that and rebuild that slightly before the pandemic really hit. And so we activated that with over 47,000 hits to that. And that is our internal platform for communication, for applications, et cetera. So it's being used widely across the city. The second piece is one thing that has been kind of near and dear to everybody's heart is really the consolidation of the airport email with the city. 2 different email systems, 2 different platforms. And so the work is finishing up to connect that system so that we're all on one enterprise system. Next is the DocuSign and paperless environment. Who would have ever thought that the city would be able to pivot and turn in probably a 2-week time frame to a paperless environment for both legislation and our contract. And there's probably been, we look at this in envelopes, there's been about 5,000 envelopes that have passed in less than 30 days as it relates to DocuSign. And that's separate packages of legislation and also contracts that have been signed electronically. That is outstanding. And last in the application area is just adding virtual tools. We've added Microsoft Teams, which is the main tool that we use to communicate as we're in this posture. Also, we've procured Zoom for some unique needs that we have, but we went from averaging around 15 meetings per day in Teams before COVID to around 400 plus unique meetings. And so that's just a testament to the fact that the city is able to move in that way to be able to adopt technology that quick. Last but not least, one of the reasons and the main reasons why I was brought in is really to help us in the security area. And so the first thing that this isn't a popular, this is not a popular initiative, but it is probably the most important initiative that we have completed over 12 months. And that is our network segmentation. This was something that was recommended, highly recommended, and suggested by the Department of Homeland Security upon my arrival. And so within this 12-month time frame, we were able to finish that up approximately 3 weeks ago, which provides a huge amount of security for the city. Again, I talked to the multi-factor. We removed a lot of our legacy devices from the environment, and we now really have shifted our focus a lot more to strengthening our policies. And we want policies that are tied to the security enhancements that we're making. And so we've been working with law, we've been working with HR. They've been extremely helpful. Also, the Department of Procurement around our policies as it relates to security and making sure that they are strong. As we move to the proposed budget changes, on the next slide, what you will see is the Department of Atlanta Information Management has a proposed budget decrease of about $1.6 million. When you start to look at the two areas around personnel and professional services, the city last year in IT and general fund had about 148 heads. We are now down to approximately 137, and so we've been very strategic, and that's through different means, whether it's retirements or transfers or terminations. We've come down drastically in the amount of employees that we have, so we'll be able to absorb that personnel cost, and also our professional services cost. There's about a $1.3 million decrease, and what we're doing with that is really looking at our contract structure, and we are really making sure that we are evaluating the contracts that we need, that we are turning off the things that we don't need within the city, and that we are focusing on our buying power and our leverage power. And so we'll be able to absorb that, through those types of means and those types of things that we're doing as it relates to the city. On the next slide, which is our proposed operational changes, some of which I talked about on the previous slide, but when you start to look at security, we've been able to save close to $800,000 in security, and that's around really reducing our contracts and getting rid of redundant applications within our security portfolio. And so one of the other pieces, as you can see, we've canceled close to 5 subscriptions and security contracts, and we also have spent a lot of time renegotiating contract terms and services for contract renewals. And then the last piece is really looking at how we can split fund a lot of these expenses across the city. The second piece is the infrastructure operational side of things. And so, there's about $500,000 in savings there. And some of those areas are, or some of the ways that we were able to do that is, again, through contract renegotiation and contract renewals, but also making sure we're putting in technology that is extremely efficient and impactful. And so those are some of the things that we were working on there. And also I talked a little bit about the personnel, which is around $250,000 in savings. And so we were just reassessing our positions and reassessing our support and IT service needs for FY21. As I move to the last slide, one of the questions that we had last year, a lot of the questions that we got were around community-focused areas that the Department of Atlanta Information and also the City of Atlanta, were working on, and some of the things that are impacting our community but not just the people that we support in-house, but what are we doing outside to really help the community? And so one of the areas that we focused on was the Centers of Hope. That was in discussion with the mayor's office. That was one of the areas that they wanted to focus on. And so we were able to get Sprint to donate close to over 200 hotspots free of charge for our Centers of Hope and our APS students. But also AT&T provided a cash donation of close to $300,000. And so I want to thank them both for really working with our department to get that over to really help the community. I know the Parks and Rec department is really looking to use that money to help in some of their initiatives for the community. The next is our affordable housing dashboard. I always, sometimes the people behind the computer screen don't necessarily, they're not necessarily seen, but we have several of our developers who worked extremely hard to get this dashboard up and running. Also, we have a new initiative that will be coming before you around a digital kiosk for the city that we are extremely excited about. And the last the last point on this slide is really around our ATL Strong website that, between IT, communications, and the mayor's office, we really were able to turn around in a short amount of time to create a website that has been extremely impactful for the community and the residents of the city of Atlanta. And so these are some of the areas I could go on. I know we did a lot of work on Bank Atlanta as well, Bank on Atlanta. And so I just wanted to put that in front of you to let you know that, for the Centers of Hope, we replaced probably the entire end user environment with new computers. And so now we're focusing on access. And so with that, Councilwoman I will yield the floor back to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Brantley. Let me see who I have in the lineup. See who has any questions. All right. Well, I am waiting for people to get lined up. I have a question, and you may have touched on this, but what, as we have tried to, in this time, provide. There's been a great need for wireless access across the city. What public areas in the city have Wi-Fi that is provided through the city or some relationship to the city?
Yeah, and I'll just start, and then I'll yield the floor to our Chief Technology Officer. But I do believe I know for sure a lot of our parks have that access. But Ty, could you take this question?
Yes. So, hi, this is Ty Hayes. We are working strategically to make sure that all of our parks and recreation centers have Wi-Fi capabilities, but the project that Mr. Brantley mentioned earlier that we will be bringing in legislation shortly, the digital kiosk that we will be implementing across the city will also provide free Wi-Fi capabilities. But to that end, that's what we're doing around a community, from a community focus, and we're working with the school system as well in those instances. We've also begun some conversation with housing and even some of our senior communities to look at some digital equity plans and figuring out how to get training around some of the technology, but also making sure that our public assistance in our senior environments have Wi-Fi capabilities, and that's through some of the negotiations with our internet providers.
All right, thank you so much. All right, I'm going to call on Councilmember Marcy Overstreet.
Aid. So Okay, now my line is unmuted. So thank you all for the presentation. We are in the digital age, so this department is extremely important. I want to ask you guys a couple questions about your budget. How do you feel about your budget? Do you feel that it is as robust as it needs to be, considering how we are leaning on it in these times? And I want to also add that I did notice how sturdy and efficient our systems have been during this COVID time. So kudos to your department for doing such a good job during this unprecedented transition that we've had to make as far as what we're doing online compared to what we've done in the past, face to face. So you guys have really had to step up, and I don't see where we've really missed a beat. So want to make sure that your department is standing up the way it should be in your eyes. Want to know if you think that your budget is what you feel that it should be, and continue the good work, continue to be as innovative as you have been, and just answer that. And I have one more thing to say.
Absolutely, and thank you, Councilwoman Overstreet. You guys have been you've been extremely supportive of the AIM department. What I will say is, a year ago, the city took a lot of measures around making sure that we had what we needed in our budget to prepare us for a time like this. And so a lot of the infrastructure work that you have been witnessing through your usage, it was really kind of the precursor for making sure that we had a real stable environment. So this year I do think that the budget supports the actual lane that we are in now, which is more around streamlining operations, more around policy, and really starting to operationalize a lot of the investment that has been put into the city. And so, well, the one thing I will say is we will not in any way lose any support as it relates to our ability to support the city within the city of Atlanta. I don't expect any of it to decrease. And so from that standpoint, I feel like we are okay.
Oh, good. And that's exactly what I wanted to hear, because our surrounding cities in Metro Atlanta are always looking to us for the initiatives that we have. And I feel very proud and confident about the ways we've been able to really saturate our market with, necessary movement as far as digital is concerned. When we're asking our residents to go online and sign up for this and call 311 for everything except for, emergency things. I just really feel confident about it, and I know that has a lot to do with your department. How do you feel about where we are as it relates to our cyber attack, not last year, but year before that? Do you think we've completely gotten on the other side of that? And, just where are we with that?
Yes, and I think that's a very good question. I think that we are on the other side of it. You never want to walk around with a big S on your chest as it relates to these type of things, because you don't want to invite the wrong type of attention. But I will say, compared to where we were pre this, it's been a 360-degree turnaround, and that's not just from the technology that we've implemented, but it's also been a focus. It's been a real strategic, narrow focus, and I think that the employees within the city of Atlanta are just as much aware of the potential threats as we are. And so anytime you make anything a focus, you do come out better. And I think I also look at the direction that we're moving in, and it's really around training. It's really around standardizing operational procedures, and that is what the team has really started to focus on as we move forward. And so I really feel like we are I'm sleeping a lot easier. I feel like we are in a much better place.
Yeah, I do too. I really do. I think we made the best of a horrible situation, and we've moved in a better direction as a city because of it, actually. So last thing, I want to help you in identifying the population that needs help as far as, the initiatives that you were speaking of earlier about the digital divide for seniors. And I know in my district, I have like 8 senior facilities that I know could use a better connection. And if the city can help in any way with that, because, we have this hard to reach population. And in times like COVID, like now, I'm having to use so many different mediums in order to reach them. It's been, really hard. And I would like for us to streamline that so that, going forward, we won't have all of these challenges with reaching, people that are not internet savvy or have Wi-Fi or any of those basic things that are, prevalent right now that we need as during times like COVID, they've been ostracized. We know that we have this gap. So I want to help you to reach those populations and move forward with really minimizing our digital divide. So thank you again to you and your entire team for all that you do. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We'll be happy. We will be happy to partner with you on that. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Overstreet. I'm going to give people just another minute or two to make sure nobody else has a question to ask. I do have one more question myself, though, Mr. Brantley. I think the city all around, and I thank your department, has done a fantastic job of continuing to operate with hardly skipping a beat and continue to provide services and keep employees being productive in doing their jobs. And a lot of work went into that to, get everybody, get a virtual city up and running. So thank you for your work on that. I'm also assuming that we are, hopefully, from a hardware, software perspective, we're heading into fiscal year 2021 in really good shape, because we did have to make some, unplanned expenses at the tail end of fiscal year 2020 to get everybody the equipment and the software that they needed. So I just wanted to sort of get your feedback on that of, will we be in a little bit better shape this year of not having to do updates and refreshes because you just worked your tail off in March and April to get everybody up to speed and running?
Yeah, I think we are in a much better space, especially with our end user devices, and making sure that we were able to provide the necessary equipment to those who needed it, but also really getting a chance to put a new support model into action right away, and making sure that we have the tools to be able to support the employee base remotely is extremely important. I think as we continue to move forward, every day is a new learning experience, and I say that literally, because we're finding out in this particular age, and for me to feel this secure, when we have all of our end user devices all over the place. They're not in a controlled environment anymore. They're in homes all across the city of Atlanta and outside the city of Atlanta. And so we've been able to, we were looking at the support data. It's about the same. We didn't have that big of an uptick, which meant that a lot of our equipment and a lot of our telework applications were working as needed. And as we start to move forward, the investment, not necessarily for a pandemic, but for flexibility, the investments pre-COVID that you guys have approved and the mayor's office have approved has really yielded a lot of benefit for us and will continue in FY21 as we continue to make adjustments.
Well, thank you so much for your hard work in keeping us up and running. Thank you for a very focused and concise budget presentation today. I'm going to give everybody the last 30 minutes of their day back, and we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Since I don't have questions from any council members, I forgot to do a roll call at the beginning of this meeting, but we have been joined by just about every member of City Council and Council President Morris. So thank you to my colleagues for participating and being with us today. We're going to wrap this up now. We will reconvene tomorrow at 10 a.m. virtual, just like we did today. The lineup tomorrow is 10 a.m. Department of Public Works, 11 a.m. Department of Transportation. We're giving DOT an hour and a half because that's a new department and there's a lot going into the restructuring of that. We will do watershed management at 12:30 and Invest Atlanta at 1:30. And then at 3 o'clock, everybody remember, we will be having our update from the mayor on the city's COVID-19 response. So we look forward to being back online and discussing the city's budget tomorrow. The public can continue to watch on Channel 26, on the Atlanta City Council website, or on social media on the Atlanta City Council page. And to my colleagues, be on the lookout tomorrow morning by 8:30. You should receive copies of the presentations, and to the extent that there are any budget book update pages, you will receive those in the morning as well. So thank you, everybody, for participating today. This is a tough year to be doing a budget, but it's evident of how much hard work has been going into this. I want to thank the finance team and the Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Bartlett, and all of the mayor's team for the behind-the-scenes work that they've done to get us heading in the right direction. And we will see you tomorrow at 10. Thank you.